Yeah, there were a lot of evolutions, definitely to have it baby ready. But I mean, that was also kind of a cool aspect of it because you just remind yourself that, for what you need, you built it. You can just rip it back out and completely reno it.
The road to tiny house living can sometimes be bumpy, but my guests today, Justin and Juby, show us that a life of adventure is possible when living tiny, even with a child. Justin and Juby did a great school bus conversion and have been sharing their adventure on Instagram and YouTube for a few years now. I've heard about them from members of Tiny House Engage as well as from some previous guests on the show, so I knew I had to have them in for an interview. And they don't disappoint. In this interview, we talk about the nitty-gritty of what it's like to live in a bus, including what it takes to kind of set up the bus when you arrive somewhere and break it down so that you can travel again, mistakes and issues that they've had along the way, and how they manage their businesses from the road, because these are two entrepreneurs who are living tiny with a child and from the road. I hope you stick around. I want to tell you about something that I think will be super helpful as you plan, design, and build your tiny house. Tiny House Decisions is the guide that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. It comes in 3 different packages to help you on your unique tiny house journey. And if you're struggling to just figure out the systems for your tiny house, like how you're going to heat it, how you're going to plumb it, what construction technique are you going to use, like SIPs or stick framing or steel framing, Tiny House Decisions will take you through all these processes systematically and help you come up with a design that works for you. Right now, I'm offering 20% off any package of Tiny House Decisions. For listeners of the show, you can head over to thetinyhouse.net/THD to learn more and use the coupon code TINY at checkout for 20% off any package. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/THD and use the coupon code TINY for 20% off. All right, I am here with Justin and Juby. Justin, Juby, and Azalea are a family of 3 traveling around the world full-time whilst documenting their journey on YouTube. In 2017, they started building out a school bus into their full-time home and just a year later had a baby join them for the adventure. For the next few years, they worked towards quitting the 9-to-5 and in 2019 finally hit the road with their bus called Red Peppa. Their hope is to share and inspire their audience to seize the day and know that all dreams can be manifested into reality. Justin and Juby, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here and to talk with you more about, our travels and bus life and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was hoping you could kind of expand on the story of, just deciding that bus life is what you wanted. Like, how did you decide on a bus versus, a tiny house on wheels, a traditional tiny house on wheels, or a van?
Yeah, I think that Genesis kind of started with you, yeah?
Yeah. So I guess back in 2013, I started a business that I no longer have right now, but it was called Moonflower Child, and it was a wandering boutique, or it evolved into a wandering boutique where I bought a short school bus and converted it into a store and started traveling up and down the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing those trips on my own, and it was a lot of fun, but we decided that there was some sort of adventure there that we were kind of hoping to explore together. And so we decided, after a lot of conversation, because we had actually talked about living in a tiny house, in a yurt, in
a cob house,
everything
you could think of that was tiny.
We sort of landed on bus life and buying a school bus. I guess it just seemed like the right fit for the time. Living tiny and being able to move it easily, because those tiny houses on wheels that are on trailers are sort of on trailers to get around all the legalities of being so tiny, but not necessarily made for traveling as much as we had intended to. So, yeah.
Well, there's also that one turning point with the event in downtown Raleigh too. Yeah. She was vending a local event, and it was really cool. It was right in the downtown of Raleigh. And so I wanted to help her out. And we just decided to like hit the town and then go and sleep in the bus because she had to do the event the next day too. And I remember we had so much fun that evening. And when we woke up the next day, we just like looked out the window, saw the city. We had access just to like go wherever we wanted to before her event. And I think it just kind of hit us and we were like, wow, this is
cool.
Yeah, epic. Like, what if we did this on a regular basis? And that's kind of was the trigger to help us say, let's move forward. Let's do another bus and let's see what this bus life thing is all about.
That's awesome. So it was through experience of just like having that feeling in the bus, realizing that it could work for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like it took you a couple of years to go from that dream or that realization to actually having a bus that you could live and travel in.
It felt like decades.
Yeah, like that year that we bought the bus, though.
Yeah. True. We pulled the trigger fast. I mean,
yeah, we found a bus like right after we got married and started working on it a little bit like later that year because we got married in July and then bought the bus in August and then started working in like November. And then we were going to move to Atlanta and things kind of fell through and we ended up moving to a tiny house community farm kind of south of where we were living at the time in Chapel Hill in North Carolina. And yeah, we didn't work on the bus for a hot minute until like the new year came. And that's when we also found out that I was pregnant. All kinds of things kind of started unraveling and we were like, okay, we need to build this bus quick. So we moved into the bus in August that next year, but didn't really start traveling with it until like a couple years later.
Yeah, throughout the process, there was a lot of life that happened along the way.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of transition that had to be made. We were living in a house that we rented in Durham, North Carolina for, I forget how long, 3 years. Yeah. And so there was the process of like downsizing, and then there was the process of building the bus. And I think there was also the process of like work and being able to like sustain ourselves and cover the bills. That was kind of another inspiration point for going over to Bus Life too. We were working so much, trying to build our own thing and trying to, at the time I was with a startup. So I was working crazy hours trying to build somebody else's dream. And so, yeah, it was a lot. I've seen a lot of people go and do the process a lot faster than we did.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, with everything that we're balancing and then bringing our first child into, it was a lot, but we made it.
Yeah.
How did you know that it was time to kind of hit the road?
I don't think there was a definitive moment where we were like, okay, we're deporting now for good. We kind of always had to come back to North Carolina for the longest time for Justin's beekeeping business, just because he didn't have people at the time working for him. And so we could only leave for so many times in the year or so many like months at a time. It was just because the way beekeeping was structured,
Yeah. It was really a buildup, it was a slow transition. I remember our maiden voyage, we went to a local music festival called Shakori Hills. And that was like our first trip. Yeah. And it was amazing.
Yeah, we loved it.
I remember we overheated on the way home.
Oh, yeah, that was super stressful, like breaking down for the first time and kind of like understanding the inner workings of like, road troubles and having to navigate just being cool with it.
And trying to be fluid,
patient,
even when things go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then it was like, okay, well then let's take a week trip a little bit farther away. And then eventually we
went all the way up to Vermont.
Yeah, we did like an entire like fall/winter trip.
It was like a 1 month trip to Vermont though.
Yeah, we went up.
That was way
really
too fast.
And then over
I'm
the
sorry
winter,
I missed you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Wish we could have stayed longer, but yeah, we learned pretty quick, or actually maybe not. Maybe it took longer than we thought to like learn that traveling in the bus is better when you go slow, which, as they say, is the motto, driving in the slow lane or live life in the slow lane.
It's probably a no-brainer, but it took us a long time to figure out, maybe because we were trying to squeeze so much in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
But then eventually we took a winter trip to Florida and stayed there for like 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then just this past year, we took it out west, and that trip was epic.
Yeah.
Absolutely epic. So yeah, no definitive moment where we like, let's go. It was like
progressively gotten to be like longer stints of travel in the bus.
It's just a buildup over time.
Yeah.
So when you say go slow, my first thought was, okay, just don't drive that fast. But you also try to not spend so many hours of the day actually driving. Like you try to drive less and like see the places more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that play into the concept of going slow.
Which you can't go fast in a bus anyway.
Well, we actually broke our governor, so we can go a little faster now. We had a governor on the bus, which like maxed out the speed limit for the bus to actually be able to drive at 55 miles per hour. But for some reason on our trip west, it decided it was no longer going to be in use and we could drive faster than that if we wanted to. But I don't
which is
think
like a
we would.
super speedy 65.
Yeah.
So watch out.
Yeah.
I think with the planning though, like, yes, absolutely. Over time, we realized how intense it was to try to go even just like 4 or 5 hours in a day in a bus. Break down, pack up,
Also,
going slow,
we have a
getting
Zania
gas.
too, you know, like she can only handle so much driving time in a day before she starts to get stir crazy and need to get out the house and do stuff.
Yeah, so for us, I think we realized like usually we put a cap on it for like 3 hours, maybe
3-4 hours max.
Is pushing it.
Yeah.
But that's also like in regular driving, that's probably like a 2-3 hour drive, maybe.
But it makes things so much more enjoyable though. You know, we just like you said, we just plan on it taking longer to get somewhere. But when we do short stints like that, it's so much easier. And we do have more time to like enjoy the area that we were in instead of just breezing right through.
Yeah.
Got it. So can you tell me about Red Peppa? Just kind of like how big of a bus, what kind of bus, like, give me some stats about Red Peppa.
Well, the actual name came from the name of the paint color that we used. Like, they come up with all these really interesting paint names. And the one that we chose was called Red Peppa. And so thus it was. That was the name of our bus. And it is a 1998 Bluebird TC 2000. She's 33 foot. She's got a Cummins 5.9 liter engine, and she's just an absolute beauty. She's been great to us. We talk about the breakdowns, but ultimately, like for the amount of miles that we put on and the things that we've done to her, she's done absolutely amazing, I would say.
Yeah. And it seems like the breakdowns are a part of living in a bus. I have never interviewed someone living in a bus who hasn't kind of mentioned, the breakdowns. So, you know, it sounds like you had your first breakdown on an early trip.
Yeah, I guess the problem that we encountered on that one early trip is sort of like an ongoing problem and a problem that we're sort of learning to adapt and live with. Just because we've heard that it can be an issue with a lot of buses, and that's just like, you know, growing pains of getting old together, I guess. So she overheats and takes a little minute to cool down, but she doesn't like going up big inclines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we also tow our Jeep as well. So that can put a lot of pressure on the engine and also cause her to overheat a little bit faster. Wow. So these are just things that we're like now aware of. And so whenever we're, you know, going through like the Rockies, we'll drive separately. We might have to take a couple of pit stops on the side of the road and just let her cool down. We'll like cook lunch, we'll do some work or whatever, and then get back on the road.
So you talk about going slow, we go even slower.
Wow. So you're towing an SUV behind a 33-foot bus.
It's a pretty big rig when it's all put together.
Mm-hmm.
And is the Jeep on like a trailer, or is it just on all four wheels hooked up with one of those things? I don't know what they're called.
The towable. We flat tow. We used to have a Honda Civic, and I guess we could have towed that one, but we decided we wanted to get something that could go off-road, so we'd have the option to go places without the bus and venture a bit further. So we intentionally set out to find a vehicle that we could flat tow, so we didn't have to deal with like the trailer and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and the Jeep is black, so we figured it would make the most sense to call it Black Peppa. So we have which tows Black Peppa.
Yeah.
And that probably puts us at maybe 43 foot.
Yeah.
So it's a beast to drive, but I will say though, like having the ability to tow our vehicle behind us has been huge, especially with Azalea. You know, she's only going to be able to stand so much time in a baby seat. And so having her in the bus when we travel, we can travel for longer distances. And like when you're staying in the middle of nowhere in the bus, you do not want to take the bus to the grocery store.
Right.
Like that would just suck. So having that little adventure mobile is really awesome.
Yeah, I thinking about it just now, I was kind of like, how do people do it if they don't have a vehicle? I guess bicycles, walking. It just probably limits how far out from town and from supplies you can be.
For sure. Some people have motorbikes, and then some people, just pack it up and ride into town and use their home as their vehicle.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes more sense for smaller buses. Like if you have a short school bus, that's probably a little bit more manageable. But for us, like when we set up, we have things we put out on the counter. And like sometimes we work hard to get to the spot that we're parking at. So it can be kind of a nightmare to like go in and out with the bus. And we only want to do that when we arrive and when we leave.
Yeah. That being said, though, like it's a nice luxury to have, but it can be done. There's plenty of people who don't have that secondary transportation and they get by just fine. So, it just depends on what your priorities are,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking, with the prevalence now of inexpensive e-bikes, that could be a great way to do it.
Oh yeah. Or even those electronic skateboards too.
Yeah. The boosted boards.
Yeah.
I don't know how many groceries you'll carry home on those, but you'll have a lot of fun. That's for sure.
Really, really big book bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you knew you were pregnant, or you basically built out the bus after you had Azalea. So you didn't have to modify it for a kid, or am I wrong on that timing?
Like in the middle?
Yeah. So we were building the bus and then we found out I was pregnant. And so we sort of we knew she was obviously going to be a newborn for like the first 6 months to a year. She's kind of still pretty small. So we didn't need like dedicated space for her. So we kind of just went with the plan that we had originally set out to build.
Yeah.
She had a hanging bassinet that I macrameed. And then she had that same bassinet like on the bed, on the edge of the bed, so that it wasn't unsafe for her as she got older.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually made my closet, sounds so terrible. We made my closet into her bedroom, and me and him were sharing a really small closet. And then she grew out of that and we extended the closet. And then she grew out of that and we did a whole bedroom reno, where we sort of like raised the bed and put her bed underneath. And she has a full-size twin bed underneath our bed. So we kind of have like a bunk bed situation, which also gave us more room in the garage for storage, gave her an entire like space to call her own. And then we have, in a way, a bit more privacy because we're sort of like above and she's below, and it's more secluded, I guess. Like we have separate rooms in essence.
Got it.
Yeah. So the trans,
a lot of evolution.
Yeah, there were a lot of evolutions, definitely to have it baby ready.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was also kind of a cool aspect of it, because you just remind yourself that, for what you need, you built it. You can just rip it back out and completely reno it to fit whatever is going on in your life too. Yeah. And that's what we did. And when you look at her bedroom today, I mean, she loves it. She has like this little awesome little cave with a bookshelf inside and like where she keeps her toys. And I mean, it's a pretty cool place for a kid to have a room. And it's also been cool for us. Juby's like the master of design. So she gets to dream up all these ideas that make sense for the space that we have for the bus and make it just kind of fun.
That's awesome. So you are in Tulum, Mexico right now. How long have you been there, and how long are you planning to stay there?
We've been here for about 2 weeks now, and the leave date is sort of like, I don't know, it keeps changing. It might be the end of January, it might be the end of February.
Okay.
We're going to be going back to North Carolina for his beekeeping season come March and April for a couple months.
Uh-huh.
And we decided to come down to Mexico without the bus. We needed sort of an escape. Bus life can be a bit taxing on just so many aspects of living a really happy, healthy life. If you get really worn out from travel and hygiene and managing, Wi-Fi and all these things that come with the struggles of bus life in reality. So we wanted to stay put somewhere stationary, have long showers, so we didn't have to worry about the water tank running out or anything like that. Have internet like endlessly, so we could kind of get some work things done, explore the beaches, get some good weather and adventure, and see what sort of real estate might look like down here.
Sure.
We've been wanting to live potentially overseas where our money can go further and have that as sort of like an escape from, I don't know, from other things that we get into throughout the year, and a place that we can kind of call home. So yeah, we're here for a bit, just adventuring and enjoying the winter.
That's awesome. And so did you drive the Jeep down, or you flew down and you're renting a place in Tulum?
Yeah, we flew down. We actually left the bus and the Jeep in kind of the outskirts of Las Vegas, where we sort of ended up after our trip west. So yeah.
Well, that's exciting. I think it's
a bit smaller than a Jeep.
Yeah. It's always it's nice to hear that, because obviously what we all put out on like Instagram is very like polished, and it's like it's the photo. You know, I've done a lot of bicycle touring, and it's like the photo that you post is at the top of the mountain with the great view, but like you don't post the photos of like riding your heavy bicycle for 2 hours up the mountain and like falling and skinning your knee and all those things. So it's like good to hear like, yeah, we needed a break from bus life, and, you know, we wanted to stay put for a little while, but sometimes when you step away from something like that, you can appreciate it more.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been good for all of us. I think the idea of traveling in the bus is really magical, and we love the concept. And I think it would be different if it was just the two of us. We'd be able to like travel somewhere, get our work done in the morning, and then adventure all afternoon and get those Instagram photos, you know. But the reality for us is that we have a kiddo who just turned 3 yesterday. And so it means that like we each have to get work done still in the day, and we still have to travel, and we still obviously want to adventure and see the places. So we're trying to like, one of us work in the morning while the other one's with Azalea, and then we'll flip flop in the afternoon. And then, you know, it's just ends up being like a full day of work. And then when do we visit an adventure? It's sort of,
right.
That's more of a chore, I feel like, to get everyone out the door at the end of the day, when we're all like so tired. So being here in Mexico is like, she's at school in the mornings, we're getting our things done in the morning, and then in the afternoon we can go to the beach, we can go see some cenotes and spend time together as a family, which is what we set out to do when it came to bus life. So
yeah, but I'm excited to just looking back at some of the video and pictures that we got from our final adventures in the bus 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Looking back on it, it was just so magical and so beautiful. And it was mind blowing to see like, yeah, we were able to go to those places, park in those areas and adventure and do these hikes and see all this stuff because of the bus life. That was awesome.
For sure.
And I think this break from bus life is going to be really important for us, so that we can go with just sort of a new, fresh approach when we go back to the bus and see more of the West Coast, and just kind of be ready for the next adventures that come with it too.
Yeah. Are you planning to make any changes to the bus or to how you travel in it?
Always trying to make changes to the bus, as far as like renos and stuff on the inside. There's just a lot of things that we can never seem to get around to finishing that need to be updated and changed. So yeah, always. And
I feel like it's always maintenance too. Like you're always going to be working on something or changing something or fixing something or upgrading something too. So
there's a lot of wear and tear on the road.
Yeah, that's like a forever thing. But
adventuring the West Coast for sure. I think we want to go up and down, and we haven't been to Oregon or Seattle area. What else? I mean, like Northern California above San Francisco. I've never gone further than that. So I'd love to see up there. And
we barely even scratched the surface. There's so much left to go.
So much, for sure. So
yeah. And it seems like you also kind of have punctuated some travel in the bus with international travel to Iceland.
Yeah, that was sort of what kicked off our like, we travel full time now life, I guess. We put together a partnership with Happy Campers, a van company in Iceland, and it was supposed to be a pit stop on the way to visit my family in the UK. So it was going to be like a kind of quick and easy stopover from there. And because of COVID and the way things had kind of been shaping up, we ended up just going to Iceland and then coming back and seeing my family later in the year. But it was a really amazing trip, and it was like definitely
it was cool
a cool experience for van life too.
It was cool to try van
we've
life.
never done that before.
Definitely. It made me appreciate all the size we have in our humongous bus.
Yeah, the bus felt big for sure.
But at the same time, like it's just pros and cons to both sides. I mean, driving that thing around in Iceland,
so easy.
You
could go anywhere.
God. So easy to break down and then like build back up once you're parking too. Not to mention the country in itself. Wow. Like the entire island is like a scene out of Lord of the Rings. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. That's on my wife and I's bucket list for travel for sure.
Yeah, definitely would go. It's worth the visit, no doubt. And we were there for 10 days. It felt like not enough to see the country and everything that it had to offer. But in reality, it was more than enough for what we could handle. It started to get cold, and with Azalea, again, things are a little bit harder, I feel like, when you have a little one, and we definitely pushed it to the limit towards the end there.
You got to admit, she was a trooper there.
She
10 days in a van around Iceland.
For sure.
Yeah. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Tiny House Decisions, my signature guide, and the resource that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. It starts with the big decisions, which is, should you build a tiny house yourself or with help? Is a pre-built shell a good idea? Is a house on wheels better than on the ground, and what works better for you? Deciding on the overall size, deciding on whether you should use custom plans or pre-made plans, different types of trailers, and more. Then in part 2, we get into the systems. So heat, water, showers, hot water, toilets, electrical, refrigeration, ventilation. And we're only 2/3 of the way through the book at this point. From systems, we go into construction decisions, talking about nails versus screws, SIPs versus stick framed versus advanced framing versus metal framing. We talk about how to construct a subfloor, sheathing, roofing materials, insulation, windows, flooring, kitchen. I know I'm just reading off the table of contents, but I just want to give you a sense of how comprehensive Tiny House Decisions is. It's a total of 170 pages. It contains tons of full color drawings, diagrams, and resources. And it really is the guide that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. Right now, I'm offering 20% off any package of Tiny House Decisions using the coupon code TINY when you head over to thetinyhouse.net/THD. That's THD for Tiny House Decisions. Again, that's coupon code TINY when you check out at thetinyhouse.net/THD. So you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I want to ask you about the kind of the breakdown, pack up kind of routine. Like, what can you run through, like the things that you have to do to set the bus up in a location, and then what you have to do to kind of get it back onto the road?
Yeah, it's a lot shorter than when we first started.
Yeah. We definitely have found ways to kind of cut corners and keep things pre-packed where they belong, as opposed to like unpack and pack back up.
Well, you could do the inside of the bus. I could do the outside.
Yeah, that's generally how our system is like I'm inside the bus doing all the kind of little things that are out on the kitchen counter, doing any dishes that may have been left out. We have a Berkey water filter. So I used to put that in the sink. And then I actually gave away all my plants before we came to Mexico because I didn't know anyone in Vegas to take care of them. But I had a lot of little plants. So those would all go into the sink as well. The big ones would get moved off the front dash and into the back. We'd have to roll up the front window curtains, put the one curtain that covers the door that we'd go in and out of the bus, put that one back on the bed. What else do we do? Oh, like latch up all the cupboards and put a ratchet strap over the fridge. Yeah.
Latch the fridge.
That's the ratchet strap. It's hard to remember when we're not in the bus, you know, like in the bus, it's just like,
it's obvious because you see it all.
What to do.
Yeah, it's like, think of it as like batten down the hatches on the inside.
Basically.
And then for like the outside, the engine, mainly like checking the engine oil, transmission fluid, and
cut the propane.
Check the coolant.
Make sure like the gray tank is plugged and it's not going to like leak everywhere when we head out.
And then there's like hooking up the Jeep.
Yeah.
Putting the transmission in neutral, hooking up the tow bar.
And then if we've like had to level, we've got chucks that we like scooch the bus forward like maybe a foot or two and then collect the chucks, put those away, probably just do a walk around, make sure all the like doors on the outside of the bus are like closed properly.
You know, when we talk about it, it seems like a lot.
Yeah, close the table on the outside. Make sure like curtains, rugs and chairs and anything that we've like had around the fire pit is all collected and put away in the garage. And then check, underneath the wheels to make sure there's going to be nothing that's going to like pop the tires or anything. Man, it's not that much. It sounds like a lot, but it's like you're really just like looking and making sure that everything's like fine.
Sure.
My God, we're pros at it by now. We don't even like look or talk to each other. We're just like, boom, we know exactly what.
Yeah, Azalea likes to help and all that. So sometimes she's helping do the dishes on the inside, or she's helping like put things away on the outside, or
sometimes dragging everything back out.
Yeah, or doing the opposite. Yeah. Sometimes she's not helpful at all. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's a photo on your Instagram that I was looking at of kind of the kitchen of the bus. It looks like you hit an earthquake and just like all the jars of food, everything just like broken on the floor. Yep. What happened there?
Oh man. We were at the gutted event down near Alamosa in Colorado. Stellar event. But, over time, with as many people going back and forth on the road, it developed these extremely large divots. And so getting out of there was super dicey, especially for like a large bus like ours. And so,
well, you forget to mention that there was the divots, and then there was what they call moon dust. So it's like super fine sand that was just like coating the entire ground. So it didn't even look like there was divots, and also means that like you cannot stop, otherwise you will get stuck. And like a lot of people had got stuck on the like road going in and out. So the big divots in the sand was just like kind of, that was a tricky combination of problems there.
So I did my best, and we got out in one piece.
Yeah.
But through all of that, like jostling and turning, our shelf that holds all of our
like honey
jars,
and rice and dried beans and like seeds and stuff that we use
it completely ripped off, and just all the jars just came tumbling down all over the place. It was intense, but I mean, other than that though, we came out unscathed, so we did okay given the state of that road.
That's lucky. I'm glad to hear that you made it out with just with that, not like a mechanical problem, flat tire, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I also read, Justin, that you are a beekeeper. Is that your business that you kind of manage from the road?
Yeah, that's it. We got a business back in North Carolina, and we install and maintain beehives right in people's backyards. I mean, beekeeping for me has been something I've been passionate about ever since college when I took my first class. Uh-huh. After I graduated, I joined on doing some research, some of the challenges that bees are facing. And I've worked for nonprofits and for-profits. And I eventually just started my own thing where, we get to install these hives right in people's backyards and use them as like a living laboratory or a teaching tool, where some people want to learn how to become a beekeeper. Some people just want us to maintain the hive and join in on the inspection so they can learn more.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're just trying to like share the magic and art of beekeeping so that people can develop an appreciation and also become pollinator advocates in the community. And so for me, it's a lot of fun, and it's something that I get to do that I'm passionate about. So yeah.
That's awesome. It's more my wife's thing, but we've kept bees a few seasons here in Vermont. We don't currently have anywhere to have bees, so we don't have bees at the moment. But it's challenging and rewarding also.
Yeah, I mean, and we tell a lot of people too that are like looking to get into beekeeping too, how challenging it really is. It's one of the most beautiful hobbies you can ever do. But man, I can't tell you year after year how many times I find myself just banging my head on the table trying to figure out how we keep more bees alive. But yeah, they're facing a lot of challenges these days. So it's tough, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we've not had that much success like having hives last through the winter. And it's tough when you only have like one or two hives. But I would say a low point for me was one time we rolled up at the tiny house, which is where the bees were. And even though we had like ratchet strapped the whole hive down to the stand, there are a lot of bears up here. and we did have an electric fence, but some animal got through the fence and knocked the whole hive over, but it was still together. And like my wife started to pick it up, and I was like, no, we need to put on our bee suits. And we did. And it was like the bees were really angry, just like lifting up the hive. And it's just like, there are some scary moments there when you hear the like pitch of the buzzing change. It gets like more intense and you're like, they're really angry right now.
Yeah, I mean, I could even imagine, we don't have too much of a bear issues where we keep bees. And also like your climate the winters are way more intense.
Yeah. They're long.
So I talk about particular challenges with things like varroa mite, but man, for you guys, it's even harder that far up north too. Yeah.
My understanding is that our bees usually made it into like March, even sometimes April. And that would be the time where it'd be really hard for them because it's the end of winter, but there still could be snow on the ground. There's nothing for them to collect at that point.
Oh yeah. And that's when, a big risk of like starvation happens right before spring sets in too. I mean, and that's kind of what we're here for with our base in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. It's just like to be able to be there to offer help and guidance and assistance and just show people some of the practices that we use that can help get their hives through the winter and through the season.
And what's the name of that business?
Yeah, so it's called Buddha Bee Apiary.
Cool.
And we've got a website and an Instagram and Facebook, and you can look us up and give us a shout.
Nice.
But yeah, really, we have a team. We have 2 more people on the ground in North Carolina. Really, really proud of the work that they're doing. And I'm excited for what we've got on the docket for next year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is eating plant-based on the road. I also eat plant-based, and I can imagine that it could be hard when you're traveling to maintain that. If you're getting hungry, you don't feel like cooking, it can be so tempting to just like stop and get a slice of pizza somewhere. So any tips or thoughts on eating plant-based from the road?
I mean, for us, I guess plant-based still includes pizza, but like not very often. We try not to go that route, but
we definitely know it's fair share of pizza.
I mean, I guilty also. I love pizza.
For sure. Yeah. But like normally we cook in kind of big batches, and that way we have leftovers, and that way it's just, okay, let's just heat something up in the skillet and then we're ready to go and have a meal that way. Yeah, we try to kind of keep to a certain type of budget that we work with, which just allows us to eat out maybe like once or twice a week. So like we don't just, swing by the pizza spot unless it's the end of the week or if it's been a really long travel day. Yeah, it just sort of depends also like our mental states. Like sometimes for us, it makes more sense to eat out, but we'll choose healthier choices. And I normally get like salad type stuff, and you like to get rice bowls and whatnot. And so
I think another thing too is we were lucky enough to have like an apartment size fridge, 9.9 cubic foot in our bus.
Okay.
And so for us, we had the space for us to be able to stock up. And it was also helpful going into the grocery store with the right mentality. So, trying to stay away from a lot of those snacky things that aren't so great for you.
Yep.
And trying to fill the fridge full of fresh fruits and vegetables when you came to a place where you could access that too at a decent grocery store or farmer's market.
Yeah.
So keeping that stuff stocked and taking every opportunity that you can when you come across and have access to it to stock it up. Because like you said, when you're in the middle of nowhere, it can be kind of a pain to find a grocery store, find good quality ingredients, things like that. So.
Yeah. And so while you're driving, is the fridge just off and it just stays closed and kind of stays cold?
It's actually on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We upgraded the solar system. So now that we're able to keep it on whenever we're driving too. And so that's awesome. We haven't gone through a winter with the new solar system yet. So obviously the winter, the sun's lower in the sky. So I'm not sure how it does in the winter yet, but during the summer, spring, summer, and fall, we've got enough energy to supply the refrigerator, which also is another like big luxury that helps us to be able to like maintain and keep a lot of food in.
Totally. And so you sell you have a product which is a cookbook. How did you decide to do a cookbook, and how, like, are these recipes that you've all developed while on the road, or are they things that you were cooking before? Like, tell me about the cookbook.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I'd wanted to make a cookbook. I was raw vegan when I graduated from college way back when, and started just like taking more pictures of food and writing down recipes, and people were curious. I think it was like trendy at that time to kind of explore that type of eating. And so people were curious about like what I was eating and how I was making certain things taste the way I was, like making raw lasagna with like zucchini, but still making like a tomato sauce and stuff like that. So yeah, I started like kind of taking pictures and documenting a little bit more of that. And honestly, nothing came of that for however many years, like 7 years, 8 years. Sort of. So that was just sort of a seed that had been in the back of my mind for the longest time. And we all love cooking at the house. And on our YouTube channel, we had shared a lot of like us cooking at the house and eating certain types of foods. And a lot of people were always asking us like, what were the recipes? And so eventually, I guess it just kind of came about that when COVID was a thing and we were homebodies, we had more time to like really get into cooking and make a lot of the recipes that we had made always at the house, as well as like explore making new ones, take pictures and actually write them out. Because I think we just sort of eyeball and make it taste the way we like. So actually sitting down to measure out all the ingredients and stuff was a big project, but that sort of slowly came about. And then I guess, was it just at the beginning of this year that we launched it? I feel like it was forever ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we finally put a book together. We had a graphic designer reach out to us and she wanted to help make a cookbook. It had been like a dream of hers to do a project like that. So that kind of all came about really, really well. And yeah, I don't know. What was the other question? You had like multiple questions in that question.
Well, I would say too, I'm just really, really proud. This was primarily Juby leading the way on this project. And I was just really, really proud to see the end result and what she was able to come up with. Not to mention how much fun it was making these recipes. We made loads of terrible recipes.
We still ate them though.
We still ate them. And we made loads more of even better recipes. And what came out of it all, I think it was a bigger project than either of us intended for it to be when we first dreamed it up. But at the end of the day, it was really, really fun to be able to share that with people and to even like brainstorm on like version 2 or version 3 potentially in the future.
Nice.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite kind of go-to recipe? Like the recipe that like when you don't have that much time, it's the one that you can cook without thinking about it, and like you always have the ingredients.
Well,
egg and cheese.
Yeah, egg and cheese.
Kind of thing. Avocado, and then like you doctor it out with some all kinds of veggie stuff, mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good one. You said it doesn't take much time. I immediately went to like the fish tacos, or actually the veggie tacos and the ramen, but that takes forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about mine too. The mac and cheese is always a good one just to have at the house, but you have to have like a blender and then you got to roast, or I guess you can saute it, but the butternut squash.
Yeah. The popsicles are pretty fast.
I mean, you got to wait for those to freeze before you can eat them. They're not very fast.
You drink them.
I mean, the smoothies are always like an easy go-to. Like we always have in the freezer. And like those are always quick and easy, and you know everybody enjoys a good smoothie.
You know what? The ramen. I just got to go with the ramen. It's going to take you years, but it's so worth it. It's so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, I'm excited to. I'm going to pick up a copy of the cookbook.
Cool.
And I can't remember where I saw, but you have a coloring book coming out soon?
Yeah, I'm working on this winter, like a sort of like a meditational journal like workbook. I again have these drawings that I made from forever ago that I never put to good use. And I'd use them for like screen prints and stuff for my old business on t-shirts and whatnot, but I had just never really done anything with them. And so for the longest time, I've had also this coloring book kind of idea in my head. And I struggled a lot with depression and sadness and sort of like a loss of my way and whatnot. And so I wanted to put together like certain affirmations, intentions, and positive kind of journal workbook like activities incorporated into the book. So it's sort of going to be, like a way for you to sit down and kind of encourage you to journal more and just sit with yourself and kind of be present. And coloring has like a good aspect of being more mindful of in the moment, as well as like stimulating your creativity in your brain and whatnot. So all of that kind of comes into play. So yeah, I'm hoping to have that ready for spring of next year. Same sort of timeline as the cookbook, because it's nice to have a project to do over winter.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're working with the same graphic designer to kind of put that together and hopefully have that ready for sometime next year. And obviously, since it's a coloring book, it'll just be hard copy. And then maybe eventually like PDF downloads of the individual coloring pages. But for now, yeah, it's just going to be the coloring book.
Awesome. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I like to ask all my guests is, what are 2 or 3 resources that have helped you along the way that you'd like to share with our listeners? These could be books that inspired you, YouTube channels that helped you with the bus build, really anything.
There's so many. Yeah, I feel like I'm really bad at remembering like specific names off by heart. I know that we have a huge library that we have a lot of the books on our Amazon affiliate store that are some of our favorite books that we love to read, to do with like gardening and horticulture, as well as like sustainable living, tiny house living. And there's a couple of like quirky books on there to do with like alternative living, that's like in buses and boats and all kinds of different kind of structures that really were inspirational resources for us whenever we were first building the bus out and just kind of trying to figure out what direction we were going to go. I hate that I don't have any of the names for you, but there's just too many. I feel like to choose one in particular.
Yeah, in terms of like YouTube channels, we watched a lot of other like bus life and van life, and you could probably name some of the channels that we watch. Yeah,
I mean, they're not doing bus build projects or anything like that anymore. It's tough because like when we first got into it, I feel like it was a trendy lifestyle, and so there was like a ton of resources that were like people creating in that moment about builds and van life and stuff. But now people are like just sharing more about their travels and living on the road and whatnot. So it's different type of content you see online. But the struggle bus, they have been building their bus for like, I don't even know how long. And they're putting a lot of love into it, which is amazing. So we started kind of building at the same time as them, and they're still plugging away at their bus build. So they still have content that's like in the moment for the build. And who's that other couple that we used to watch? They're not together anymore. They also don't make their YouTube channel anymore, but we used to watch them.
I don't know. I always think of Sailing the Vagabond.
Yeah, those guys are inspirational because they have a kid, and we can kind of relate a little bit to them and their struggles of traveling and being on, I guess, the water, not the road. But yeah.
I've also got a book too that we read really frequently called Journey to the Heart by Melody Beattie. And that's less so much like tiny house related as much as it would be like mentality. For us, like we find ourselves picking it up. It's like on the kitchen table, and whatever we're starting the day off, it's nice to do a quick reading there. And it's more so like stories and just like reminders of like how to approach life, to remember to take it slow, be positive, go easy on yourself, allow yourself to grow. It's those kind of concepts. And for me, and I think for you too, I mean, I think it's something that we really appreciate, to keep our mind on track and keep a positive mentality day in and day out.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. That looks like a really nice book. I'm going to check that out.
Totally do it.
Well, Justin and Juby, thank you so much for being guests on the show today. I really enjoyed kind of delving into your lifestyles, and it was great to meet you both.
Yeah, no doubt. It was good to chat and I guess share more.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. We appreciate you having us on and letting us share our story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to Justin and Juby for being guests on the show today. You can find the show notes, including a complete transcript and links to Justin and Juby's YouTube channel and Instagram, and lots of photos at thetinyhouse.net/193. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/193. Well, that's all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.